on you and first-time webinar attendees, thanks very much for joining us. My name is Guy Jelly. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Project Portfolio Office. Today, myself and Taryn Lee France will take us through the webinar, and we do have a customer spotlight, and I'll introduce Josh a little bit later today. We do use a online polling tool called menti.com. Multiple options. You can go to the website menti.com and there's the code over there that you can use. If you go there now, you won't see any questions yet, but as they become applicable in the presentation, they'll pop up. You can also use the Mentimeter app as an add-on in Teams if you've got that already. And you can do it on your cell phone as well. So I often, for our meetings internally, will just have menti.com open on my cell phone with the code, and as soon as the question pops up, then I can respond to it over there. So those that haven't used it yet, you can get it in the meantime. But I think let's get cracking today so that we get going. Okay, so fairly stacked agenda today. We've done quite a bit of work this year already, even though the year feels like it only just started. So we're going to talk through a lot of the homepage improvements. We have a brand new feature that we started working on over a year ago, used it with a couple of clients, and have now implemented it into the core product, and done a lot of work based on feedback from the existing clients that were using it. So that's the external form feature, which we'll cover as well. Josh will talk us through how Pacific Life has used PPO's resource capacity planning module. So I'll introduce Josh a bit later. We continue to do enhancements on our scheduler, and we'll probably do that for the next couple of months as well. So we'll cover those. And then a Q&A. And then at the end, we will discuss the next product webinar. We are, for the first time today, also showing, if Darren just goes back quickly, our planned roadmap for the year. Our roadmap is fluid. We don't publish it and stick to it and, do it exactly as planned. We publish it, we think about it, we go through an agile process, we get ideas from our client base, and the roadmap can change and does change. But we are sharing today where we think we're going to be spending our time for the next year, as long as everyone is clear and conscious that we can change it, and we do change it fairly regularly as well. But at least you'll be able to get a view of it, and we'll have a poll at the end where you can tell us which ones you think are most important, and maybe more importantly, which ones you think we've missed. Okay. We've had a fairly busy quarter. December, generally, we do work over the December-January period, but don't deploy it because clients are away, PPO administrators are away, some clients have year-ends and shutdowns and those things. So since December 2025, we've done all of these enhancements. A lot of them are covered today. Just a reminder, every single enhancement we do is free and made available to every single client as it becomes available. So we deploy on a regular basis. On a Thursday, you'll get a newsletter if you subscribe to our newsletter with a wrap-up of what's being deployed, and you'll see those pop-ups coming in your PPO instance when you log on for any new enhancements. We deploy all of them. Some of them are functionality you as a user or the administrator or owner of your PPO instance needs to decide whether you activate. Some may be applicable, some might not. For example, the timesheets entries on the homepage. If you don't use timesheets in PPO, that's a feature you may not use. And then things like the external form feature is something that the PPO administrators need to consciously decide. This is a feature we'd like to use. Switch it on, set it up, and off you go. So these are all the features that we have covered. All of these are covered on our blog. So the best place or the best way to stay up to date is to follow the blog, subscribe to it. As I said, we send you a weekly email on a Thursday, nothing more. We don't do Black Friday specials. We don't try and sell you training or anything like that. We literally just use that database to send you the Thursday email, which includes customer references that have popped up in the last week and any key feature or product or company news as well. Okay. This year, we're trying to reward our regular attendees. We seem to always have a regular set of attendees. Some people dip in, dip out. Just a reminder, we do 4 of these webinars every quarter, about middle of the month, normally on a Wednesday, normally on the same day. So all we're asking is if you want to become a PPO rockstar and get some of our PPO branded kit, which the team here at PPO use, all we're asking is to attend the 4 webinars for the year, and we'll send you something cool at the end of the year. For those of you that obviously not on the call today, you've obviously missed the first one, but for the rest of you, there's an incentive to attend the others. We do already have the dates for all the other ones that we can share with everybody as well. So just something cool to try and get some regular attendees at these webinars. New clients, these are all 3 existing clients and have been with us for many years, some of these clients, but these are all new areas and new PMOs. Most of you in the corporate space know that any large corporate these days has numerous project offices. Very rarely does it have a centralized project office that everybody works on the same process, same tool, same methodology. So 3 fairly large brands, one of them international, Aon, 2 of them locally in South Africa, who've joined up in using PPO now in the next quarter. I know there are 1 or 2 other clients joining the call today that have just joined PPO in the last month or so. We haven't forgotten about you. It's not that we don't care about you. We just cover 2 or 3 clients every quarter. So hopefully you'll be back next quarter and you'll see your logo and your names up there as well. But thank you to Nedbank, Sanlam, and to Aon for their continued support of PPO and for growing PPO internally within those organizations. Okay, I mentioned this earlier. I can't recommend it enough. I get clients who I meet with on a regular basis and say, gee, I didn't know that. And I say, my goodness, we spend hours writing content, recording videos, updating knowledge base articles, publishing a weekly newsletter. I think the only time we ever have friction at PPO is when it comes time for a newsletter and we're reviewing it and reviewing videos and trying to finalize content every Thursday to religiously send those out. So please follow the blog. Go to ppo.com/blog. I'm sure one of the ladies, maybe Lindy's putting it in the chat as we speak. We literally just send you a weekly email, which includes all the upcoming training, any customer spotlights, but the most important thing, all those product enhancements. We do a significant amount of enhancements on the product. It's available and deployed to everybody for free, but it really is up to each client to make sure they're aware of what they are and then activate what needs to be activated or ask for help if need be. So please, if you haven't yet, follow the blog. And if at any point in time you don't want to get the blogs anymore, it's 1 click, unsubscribe, and it's done. So we don't hold you forever, but we really want to ensure that all the good work the DevOps team is doing and all the good customer spotlight articles that we have are shared with the broader PPO community. Okay. I think that's where I swiftly now hand over to Taryn, and she will take us through. Myself and Lindy will answer any questions on the chat as they come up. So we generally don't take questions during the session because we pack our sessions fairly busy. But if you do have questions or stuff on the side, please pop a chat. Lindy and I will answer it. And we will, at the end of the session, if we get a bit of time, open up for some questions and those type of things from the audience as well. But please feel free to use the chat in the meantime. And Lindy and I will be managing that as we go. Okay, so over to you, Taryn.
Thanks, Guy. Hi, everyone. For those that don't know who I am, I'm Taryn, and I will take you through the new features that we'd like to cover in today's session. So I'm going to start with the homepage improvement. So much like the scheduler, the homepage is something that we'll continue to work on because this is the mechanism for a user to customize their own views. The homepage has always been that central place where you can consolidate your work and create custom views based on the data requirements that you have. Over time, we've expanded the functionality available on the homepage with things like being able to share, being able to PDF, various sources of data. We've added to the widget library. So it started out with just our list widgets. We then introduced our donut or chart widget. Bar chart came later, key metrics. So there's a number of widgets that are available for you to customize your homepage view based on your information requirements. It's a central place that you can work from. So things like inline editing has made that possible as well. And it's reduced the number of clicks that you would have typically had navigating to reports and dashboards. You now have that flexibility to create those own views. So the first feature that I'm going to cover is the group by. The group by is an extension of your existing list widget. We've added functionality within the list widget. So this is your gear icon setting for your list or table widget, which is visible in your library. You see the word table widget. Table and list is interchangeable terms. So when you click on your gear icon setting has allowed you to customize your columns, adjust your sort orders, change the columns that you see, add additional widgets within the list widgets, adjust your page size, and the group by is this option that you now see. The group by allows you to structure your data set. So if I just quickly close this, you can see I have 11 records in my project list, and it might be useful for me to see how this is structured or grouped by project manager. So if I were to change this and add a group by project manager, this will now group or structure my data using the group by field that I've selected. So I can now see per project manager, the same data set, 11 records grouped by project manager. You have this little icon that allows you to collapse or hide, and you now have your list structured in a way that makes sense. This group by is a personal preference. So you can, as a user, change whatever that group by is. So if you logged in as a project manager, looking at a group by project manager probably wouldn't make the most sense to you. Maybe you want to see it grouped by phase of your project. So if I were to change that group by to phase, and if you had a filter applied for only my projects, you'd see your projects grouped by phase. So that clearly shows you the number of projects. In brackets is the count of the projects and grouped by phase. You'll also notice that whatever you group by is no longer a column that you see in the list. So if I were to change this group by and get rid of the phase and change it to maybe portfolio, you'll see portfolio now becomes my group by, and the phase is now back as a column in the list. For PPO administrators, you have the ability to change this for your default user groups. That talks to Guy's comment earlier, where your PPO administrators may need to go and do something in PPO. And in this example, it might be that you update your widget configuration settings and apply defaults for the various user groups. It also means that a normal PPO user, you can still customize your own views, choose your own group buys, but the admins do have the ability to promote specific group buys to the various user groups, because not every default group buy will make sense for every type of user. So that's the first group buy in list widget. Remember, this is applicable to any list page in PPO. I've done an example for projects. If I were to just collapse this, the same is applicable to a risk list. So if I were to look at my risk list, very quickly, what I'd care about is my list grouped by overdue status. So this will help me to figure out very quickly how many risks are overdue, not overdue, or due soon. I could change it by risk owner. Quickly, an example of that, if I were to go and change this by risk owner, I'll be able to see my full risk list, 26 items grouped by risk owner. So this group by, a piece of functionality that's available on any list page, not only if you're working on your home page, but if you navigated to any of the list pages from your projects menu. While we're here, I'll talk about the next feature. So if you've been working with your homepage and building customized views, I'm sure Lindy has built the most homepages across our clients. And if you've done this a lot of times, you probably want a mechanism to be able to copy your widgets. So maybe this one, I want to copy this table widget. I've got an existing group by for portfolio type, and I want to do the same thing, but I just want to change the group by, or I want to change a filtering option or the list without me having to go and start from scratch, adding a widget, selecting it from the widget library, choosing a source. I can very easily click on copy. It'll copy the widget. I can paste it. It's pasted it. I can choose to put them side by side if I wanted. So it's exactly the same information. And in this one, all I want to do is change my group by option. And in this case, I want to change it to department. So it's a lot less clicks to be able to replicate what I have already with just a few minor changes. So same data set, 11 records, all I've changed is the group by, but it was a lot quicker to do this with one change to a data set. Same thing with any other widget that you might have, your key metrics, your charts. If you just want to change a parameter or condition within that, the copy would allow you to copy any existing widget and paste it. You will also have the ability to copy an entire panel. So this was copying a widget, and if I wanted to copy the entire panel, here's the option for a copy. If you click on copy, you can see the paste panel is highlighted. I can paste the panel, and that will paste exactly what I've just done. And I could choose to, in this case, change my filter, and I want to filter on data quality or department or portfolio or whatever that might be. So I have the ability to change one or two things within my data set, be it a filter, a group by, anything like that, and it'll save me clicks in building my homepage view. This copy functionality I'll just mention, it is still being tested and final changes are being made, and you'll likely receive this on your instance closer to the end of the month. But it is something that is coming. It'll be available on your homepage, whereas the group by is already available. So just take note, copy coming really soon within the course of this month, but group by already available for you to make use of. Okay, so that takes care of homepage improvements related to the group by within the list widgets, the ability to copy widgets to save you time when building customized homepage views. And finally, you now have your time entry data as a data source. So time entries has been a data source that was missing from our set of data sources when building a homepage view. We've always known that that was a challenge for specifically clients that are using time entries, and we've now plugged that gap and we've introduced the mechanism for you to be able to see time entry summary data as well as the time entry detail. The difference between the two is that the time entry summary focuses on the resource specific data. So things like capacity. So that sits at the resource level. So wanting to know, so if I were to focus as a user just on my time entries, I know that my capacity for this week is 40 hours, and this is determined on how your resource record capacity has been specified. Not all project environments dedicate full 8 hours a day to project work, so that might change from organization to organization. But in this case, mine is standard 8 hours capacity, which gives me 40 hours capacity. From my time entry data, I've booked 6.25 hours this week, so that already tells me I'm lagging behind so far. I mean, we almost at 24 hours past for the week. So I'm missing quite a bit of time. There it is, 33.75 hours, and I've not yet worked any overtime hours. So this information is your summary data, which is determined through your resource level information, whereas your time entry detail details the day that you booked the time to, the related entity that you would have booked the time to, the item, the activity that you booked against, whether it was billable or non-billable, the number of hours booked, and of course, for those that have work on project costing and have rates assigned to a resource, you'd be able to see what the equivalent of that time booked to that item is. So the time entry detail focuses on the activity level information, including the date, the item, the related activity, number of hours billable, and whether it's been approved or not. using this information, you're able to derive charts like bar charts, donut charts, and you can see things like how many hours have been booked per project, how the time is apportioned to the different activities, is the split of time spent on operations versus projects clear, is it right based on the time you've spent. So this is now something that is available for those that have time entry as a capability that's in use in your environment. We will look to expanding this default homepage dashboard view to existing clients. If you don't see a view like this, keep your eye out. It's something that we'll make available to existing timesheet users. If you don't use timesheets, you obviously won't see this view. From a detailed level, my time entries, individual users booking time, this type of homepage view would be useful to you. But if you're a PMO or you the head of a department or a resource line manager, you'd want to see an overall view of what your capacity is for your team across all your resources, total hours booked for the month, how many hours are missing. So if you're actively chasing discipline or compliance to your timesheet reporting cycles, and you want to see how much overtime or missing hours has been recorded for the month thus far, you'll be able to see this consolidated information across various teams and various resources. So the overview or the PMO time entry view will help you to determine the capacity of all resources that are booking time, total hours booked thus far, what's missing, etc. And you can see this view and the split of billable, non-billable per resource that's required to book time, activities for the month, and missing hours per resource for the month, etc. So more detailed views using the widgets that are available to you. And of course, you can use the summary data as well. So the detail level information as well. So that touches on time entries. For those of you that don't use it, this is something that is available if you were thinking about using time entries in the future. If it's not something that you are aware of that PPO supports, it is a standard capability available within the product. You don't pay anything extra for it. It's part of our standard feature set. And if you want to learn more, just chat to your success manager and they can give you more information about this capability. So it's very useful for organizations that are trying to improve their planning, and you do resource capacity planning, so you get the planning down, but you don't necessarily know whether your planning is effective. The only way to achieve that is if you know what actual time is spent against the resource planning that you've defined. So knowing how effective your planning is comes from the utilization portion of that and of resource utilization, and the only way that's achievable is through recording time. So that's it. So your homepage improvements are group by within the list widget, copying of existing widgets as well as panels, and having your time entry information as a data source, both at a summary and detailed level. Okay, so our next feature is our external form configuration. So for those of you who have done any kind of integration, we know of some clients in the past that have had to build integration outside of PPO for things like recording demand. So you might have some internal process where you record ideas, you record project requests, proposals, whatever you might call it. It's doesn't matter, but the concept is the same. You would have probably used our open API, you would have spec'd your integration, you would have gotten a developer to build that integration. But the limitations of that is your configuration of your instance is basically fixed. So you're limited in how much change you can implement to your configuration, because if you ask to do that, your integration might break. So, I mean, can be a challenge. You also need a technical resource to build that integration, and you need your own kind of exception handling when integration fails. We've got quite a few clients that had adopted the external form where PPO takes care of that integration for you. To set this up, it is now available under your administration menu. So not any user will have access to configure a form. If you click on the external form configuration page, it'll take you to this view. The first thing you'd be required to do is enable the form. You'll give your form a name. In this case, I'm going to use my demand form. And you can choose to include a header image. In my case, I'm going to include a header image. I've got an image that I've put ready here. Just want to quickly find it. There's my header image that I've got. The entity, I'm going to choose demand. So while I'm doing this, it's important to note that for every instance, you can only configure a single form. So it's either demand, so your entity that you specify, you can have one form, and that's it. If you are to change it to a different entity, it will replace that form with the new entity that you've specified. In configuring this form, you can choose to exclude certain categories. So maybe let's just look at a demand record as an example so you get an understanding of what this means. So I'm going to click on a record, and a category would refer to these fields under a heading or grouping. So in this case, if I were to say management, this is a category and there's associated fields within this category. So you can choose what category of fields you're going to expose to the user. So in the case of demand, something like the management would be fields that I would want to exclude. And you can go further and exclude other fields on that record itself. So maybe you don't want to have the user input the priority. So this sits under a different category of fields, demand requirements, but I can still say I want to exclude priority. In addition, this field captions, so the terminology that can be used in the PMO world or the project community might be different to the terminology that's used within business. So something like business need. You could have field-friendly forms that are names that are exposed to the user, and you could say something like, why do you need this? Business need or business objectives. You would be able to say things like, what do you want? And what is your goal? So you can have business-friendly terminology that's exposed to the user while keeping your project environment terminology intact. So you can configure your form. This would have typically been done by our support desk in the past, but you can now configure this yourself. And the most important thing that I want to highlight here is the security. So you can apply whitelisting to your domains. Because this is a web-based form, once the form link has been generated, that form link can be accessible by anyone, but to access and complete the fields in the form, you can choose who can complete it. So if you want to whitelist a domain, like in this case, I want to whitelist our PPO domain. So when I want to get a verification code to complete this, only if I use a PPO email address will I be able to receive a verification code to access that form. You can go a step further and whitelist IP addresses. So if you only want users to be able to complete the form while they're working on a specific IP address, so maybe if you want to restrict use of the form to remote workers or only when you're in the office and on a certain IP can you access the form, you can do that as well. So in doing this, I've basically configured my form. I can submit the change. That's my form configured. To access the link, you'll see there's a link available to me here. Accessing my form link will take me to it. I'm prompted for a verification code. Once again, I know that only a PPO email address will work. If I attempted to use a Gmail address, that would give me an error message because only that is whitelisted. I get a verification code. I complete it. Just accessing my emails quickly. Give me 1 second. There's my verification code. It's come through. On completion of my verification code, my external form is available. Those changes that I made into business-friendly terms is now available in my form. I can complete my form. So I've got a new idea for a customer self-service portal. That's the name of it. What do I want? I have a need. Copying my information here. I've got some objectives. I'm going to complete my objectives. Why do I need this? Copying that quickly. So I've basically completed my new request. When do I want this by? My required end date. I'm going to be a bit optimistic and say that I want it in the next 3 months. The department that's requesting this is IT. Who the demand owner is, I'm Barry. Who's requested it? Also Barry. What portfolios? Transform and grow. What I think it's going to cost. What the duration is. And I can submit. On completing the form, it's been completed successfully. I can go into my demand list. I can refresh my list and my customer service self-service portal. If I just check to see my items that were created today, so I can just look for log date today. And I'll see my new demand has been logged, my customer self-service portal, and there it is. So there's my item that was just logged. You can see 33 minutes past 1 o'clock, and that's my new request. So the most important thing to note here is this form can be configured by a PPO administrator. The intention of the form was to expose a form to non-PPO users. If you were a PPO user, you have access to the entity. You can record this directly in PPO. But if you're in an organization with thousands of employees, it's not always feasible to give every employee a PPO license. And in this case, it would make sense that you would configure a form and you still get your structured data submitted, recorded in PPO. If outside of this, if you didn't have something like this available, what you would have done is you would have had a paper-based manual template that's completed, submitted to the PMO, and the PMO then transfers that into a record in PPO. So that's it. That's your external form feature. If you need help with understanding how this would make sense in your environment, chat to your success manager, take note. This form, only one entity can be configured for a form at a time, and any of your available entities on your instance is there to select as a potential form. And that's it. Over to you, Guy, to introduce Josh.
Thanks a lot, Taryn, and thanks for the questions in the chat so far. I think we've tried to answer as many of them, and I think we have so far. This is one of the new features that we are doing this year. You'll see it on our roadmap when we get to the end as well. It may take a little bit of time for you guys to get it going and stuff, so if you do need any help with it, please shout and ask. We're there to help. We have, I think, 5 clients already using it, and some of them have been using it for a year already, so it's very stable and has been upgraded with all the enhancements that they've asked for, but it's now available to each and every one of you. Okay, for those of you that don't know, Josh Lumley, he works for a company called Pacific, which is a financial services-based organization. It's a global organization, although Josh sits, I don't know if I can say this anymore, Josh's office is in London, but Josh spends time working from home and from the office, so UK-based. Josh has been using PPO for about 6 years, I believe now, something like that. Longer? Less? 8, almost. 8 years. Josh is a PMO analyst there, so does a lot of work on PPO, on the data side, on the information side as well. So we've asked Josh to just share the work that they've been doing specifically with the resource capacity planning. Resource capacity planning is something that we've seen quite a big uptake on in the last couple of years. And Josh is one of those users that has been pushing the features and the functionality and what can be done in PPO. through his usage, and we asked him just to share a bit of that with us today. So I'm going to hand over to Josh, and he'll just take us through this. If there are questions, please pop them in the chat. I've been working with Josh for all of those years, so I'll try and answer what I can. Failing which, Josh will respond at the end of the session when he gets a bit of time after his presentation as well. If there's specific questions for Josh that you feel you want to, reach out to me. I'm happy to connect the two of you on email, and I'm sure Josh would be more than comfortable to respond outside of this session if you've got a question or two around this. But Josh, thanks for highlighting the work you've done and for sharing it with our audience today.
Wonderful. Well, no introductions needed because you've covered that already. Thank you, Guy. Yeah, I've been working on PPO for I've been working with PPO for 8 years now. We've implemented it twice, and we implemented it at PLRE back in 2020. Prior to that, we had no central tool. Everything was done in Excel or PowerPoint. We had no real way of maintaining accuracy easily, had no way to collaborate with PMs and other people in the PMO team, and it was really difficult to provide up-to-date MI and reporting to senior stakeholders. By the time we'd made it, it was already out of date. So having that centralized tool, which gave us that immediate view of the latest data, was very needed. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly now. Once we'd implemented PPO, we had access to the resource demand section. We use that primarily to manage resources that are working within change projects. We do also, however, cover BAU projects as well. If you have resources that are working on change projects, they're probably going to also have BAU activity as well. So only having that change activity in the view doesn't really give us that full picture. So we brought that in there as well for those resources that are more frequently managed within the tool on their demand. We cover perm resources as well as contractors, and then some third-party resources. Really, anywhere where a resource needs their capacity managed on a regular basis, we then include in the tool. We then use that to manage capacity versus demand, and I provide that information to team leads. I specifically do it within technology and provide that information to all of the technology team leads. And then that then allows us to more effectively plan our projects and prioritize which ones take place and when. So very useful information. So here's a view of our demand, our resource demand section. I've made some mock-up information here with myself and a couple of people from my team. And what we see here is a breakdown per person, per project, per month, where people are being demanded their time. It looks quite daunting, but if we go into just one of these, it then becomes a lot easier to look at. So I'm just going to go to my one here. And so it is fairly simple what we've got set up. It details the resource, who's the project, the duration, and the amount of demand required. But then we've also added a few more fields in there as well, so that we can actually provide an extra granularity. So the first thing we've done is added a project task field. This is a custom list, but it actually works directly with the tasks entity. So what we've done is allowed it to grab any tasks that are in that high-level roadmap. So if, for example, a resource is working on a project and they're specifically working on a certain bit, then we can detail that. So we can see here, these three options are in my high-level roadmap, so I can select these as well as just leaving it blank and saying I'm working straight across a single project. Another section that we've got is the demand status. Obviously, you raise demand on a project, but you need to actually confirm whether that resource has been secured yet. So at the point of a project manager raising demand, the status is likely going to be confirmation pending. Conversations take place, and then we can either mark it as formally secured or unable to satisfy demand if the team just cannot commit to that demand, and PMs may need to look elsewhere for that demand to be satisfied. And then the last one we've got is project prioritization planning. That one's linked to our prioritization tool. Won't cover that, but that's for additional functionality that we've got in PPO. That's all of the sections that we would then fill in to add that additional granularity, what we then have at the bottom is then information that's pulled through from the resource entry for myself. So this information is quite useful when it comes to reporting. For example, if I go and run a report to see all resources working on a certain project, it will do that. But maybe I want to see all permanent resources or all resources within a certain team, or who's the line manager on for all of these resources that are assigned to a specific project, things like that. And that's really important for me for working with the tech leads, because I need that line manager field, for example, so that I can actually present that information to those line managers easily. So that's really useful as well. We also, one last thing that we have set up here is we have TBC resources. So sometimes a project will be set up and we know, I don't know, we need a tester. We don't know who that tester is going to be, but we know that we need someone. So what we've actually done is we've set up a TBC resource. And so we can add this in. This has information set up in the resource section as well. So if I hit submit on this, all of this information here, our metadata for that resource will update. And then when we run our reporting, that resource manager will also get a view of any demand where no name is currently allocated. So we can then start being far more reactive to the demand that's actually coming in for projects that are a little bit earlier in the process. And lastly, just a quick mention, because this is a little bit daunting, but we have the add in grid and edit in grid function. So if I select everything in here, I can then, rather than clicking into each and every field and having to update it, we have this grid-based view instead, which I think a lot of people are far more used to seeing. And it just allows us to go in, make changes really quickly, and get in, get out, and have it looking far more accurate to what we're expecting to see. So a very whistle-stop tour on how we do our resource demand management. We then need to report that to senior stakeholders. So I've got a report and a dashboard that I use on a regular basis. First one is the resource planning appendix. So what I've set up here is an example of how I do it elsewhere. I've set up a PMO team filter. So if I click on that quickly, we can see here, I'm just grabbing myself and my two colleagues in my team and saying, show me just those resources when I run these reports. Then lastly, down the bottom, two fields that we've set up as well. So we're showing planned percentage of capacity. So everything will be in percentages. We could put it on hours like we usually see on the out of the box. And then lastly, we've got a few different options on how we actually present this information. I use other fields because I want quite a lot of granularity. We have a finance mapping for when we send this to the finance team, and then a more standard condensed view for those that just want to use it on a day-to-day basis. So running this is a kind of view that I then provide to resource managers on a quarterly basis to review the demand that those resources in their team have. So we can see here, Kathy currently has 3 lines of demand, and they're currently all marked as pending confirmation. So you'd expect that a conversation would take place there between the PM and the line manager to confirm that they can actually work on the project when they're needed. I've got one line that's formally secured, but then we have another one that's marked as pending confirmation. And then lastly, down the bottom, Sophia's got some time that's marked as unable to satisfy demand. So the PM would likely need to look elsewhere to get that satisfied, and someone working on their team to cover that work. And then lastly, notes from requirements justification, so a breakdown of what it is they're actually doing in the on the projects. So I primarily use this when working with senior stakeholders. I then provide it to them in an Excel document that can then be updated quite easily, and then bring it back into the tool, which is very useful for those that don't really use PPO on a regular basis. And then lastly, we have a more visual version of the same information as a dashboard. So again, 3 resources, all with demand planned against 3 projects with 3.3 FTE. So FTE is just full-time employee. So it's currently saying that there's more demand than we have full-time employees. And then we've got a breakdown of their demand across across those months. All of this is drillable, so we can click into these and gain more context around why they're over their demand. And then I've got a section for commentary, but also a more visual story using a bar graph showing the peaks and troughs of that demand against the capacity. And as you can see, that demand then drops off a cliff because there's no demand from January 2027. That's an incredibly quick summary of some of the parts that I do to manage resource demand in PPO. I'll probably stop there, as I know I don't have that much time. But yeah, if there's any questions that you want to put in the chat, I'll be happy to respond to them while the webinar continues.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Josh. I'm just going to answer one or two questions that came out on the chat. PPO has got a feature called the demand functionality. Demand, when we talk about demand from a PPO point of view, it's your request for project. Some clients call it ideas, some call it requests, some call it demand, but a lot of clients want to have a place where you can log a potential project or request for a project first, screen it, analyze it, do some analysis, look at your strategy, see how it aligns, and then decide whether or not to activate it and become a project and put it into the project space, and off you go. So PPO, if you look at the website and that, we talk about demand. PPO has an entity for resource planning or resource allocations, which talks to the human capital demand, the people working on the projects. A lot of organizations refer to demand, as Josh does, for resource demand. So just don't get confused between project demand, which is the demand entity, and resource allocation planning, which is the human capital demand, the people that we need to actually execute on this project, and do we have enough of them, and are they available, exactly as Josh mentioned. Josh and them have done a significant amount of work to get all the information available to map that out and provide that senior stakeholder view. A lot of organizations, I'd say almost all of them we work with, have too many project requests and too little resource demand, resources available to do it. So either you accept all those project requests and all your projects are forever late and everybody feels under pressure, or you do some sort of screening to say, based on the capacity we have in human resources, we can only do these, and then filter and choose the best projects to do. So it's a combination of managing your portfolio pipeline and your human capital and decide, which ones to do. Poor PMOs or maybe immature PMOs will accept everything and do everything, and then everything will bottleneck and everything will run behind because, we've just taken on too much and we don't have enough. Good PMOs have a good filtering mechanism, a good set of reporting around current capacity of resources, and activate only what can actually be successfully executed based on the resources available. Okay, so thanks a lot, Josh. If there are any questions for Josh, please, as I say, contact me. I'm happy to connect you to Josh, and he'll answer any specific questions you may have. Okay, moving along swiftly because we've still got a couple of things to cover, and we've only got 10 minutes left.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Guy. I'm going to speak as quickly as I can on the next set of changes. These changes relate to our scheduler improvements, so I'm going to spend some time talking about that. I've already got a scheduler open for one of my projects. The first change that I'm going to talk about is the multiple edit or multiple update of items. So here's an example where Mary Exteen is about to leave us, and she is got a couple of tasks. You can see the plan progress is 100%, and we need to quickly update them to 100% before she's offboarded from the project. I'm going to select these tasks just by using my shift button. A new icon pops up, update multiple items, and I can click on 100% and submit, and that changes the progress of the tasks that I've selected. It looks like 6 tasks there, and they've all now been updated to 100%. Because I know these upcoming tasks cannot be delivered by Mary since she'll be leaving us, I want to reallocate this work to a different resource, and Evelyn is the lucky winner. And by doing that, it changes the responsibility from Mary to Evelyn in one click. Because Evelyn is done some planning. She's highlighted that there's some of these tasks that's now allocated to her to do that's not going to take the same number of days that was specified here. So for these 2 tasks, I'm selecting them. The duration of these tasks needs to change from 1 day to 5 days. And I can go here, change the duration, and select 5 days. So this feature is a way for you to update multiple items in one click by using your shift button, selecting the items, or alternatively your control button if they're not all following each other, and make those updates. So that's the first change. The next change that I'm going to highlight is that you now have a mechanism to be able to export your Gantt view with a header. So if I click on my Gantt chart, you'll see in my Gantt view for the same project, I only want to look at my open tasks. The same functionality exists with adjusting your column widths, changing the fields using your gear icon, but I don't want to export my full plan. I just want to see, I'm going to apply a filter to see my project summary and milestones only. Here's my Gantt view. I can export that Gantt PDF. In the past, you would have exported this view from this gray line. And now, if I export my Gantt PDF, the same view, but it'll just include the project name as a header. So opening that quickly, it's done. You'll see my Gantt view now has my project name as a header and not just the Gantt. So that's the second change. And the third change, if I go back to my scheduler, is the change to the default start dates. So in the past, the way it worked is if I were to add a new task, it would inherit the start date of my line 0. This was an idea that came from one of our users making use of the login idea functionality for new users. If you click on a new task and I say task 1, you can see the default start date becomes today's date. If I were to add the task under a summary, so here, if I were to click on adding a task, the date that I should expect to see would be the 15th of May, which I see because it's following from the previous task. So it's next to that task. Therefore, my task 2 under a summary grouping will inherit that date, the next date from the last task end date. So that's the change to the start date, default start date. It doesn't adopt or take the date of the project task, but more logical date formatting based on where you insert that task. And that's it for your scheduler enhancements. There's a couple of more enhancements coming in the next month, so keep your eye out on the blog. I think there's about 2 or 3 changes that you can expect to see, all aimed at more intuitive scheduling, quicker, faster task updates. So please keep an eye on those changes. I think I did well there to cover it in the 5 minutes that I had. While we have you all still available, we'd love for you to tell us what our next client spotlight should be. So remember your mentee code. The last webinar in November, we had requests, overwhelming number of attendees asked for resource management, and we were able to secure Josh. So if there's a specific feature that you want to see, how that works in PPO, we can start planning and finding a spotlight for that, for our June webinar.
Likewise, if you're a client and you use a feature that you think you use well and you'd like to share your story, please let us know. We'll meet with you, we'll have a chat, we'll get the necessary approval from the powers that be within your organization, and you can join us for a webinar as well. There are some nice thank yous that we do give to those spotlight clients as well. So yeah, it's extra incentive to also share your PPO features. Okay. We're going to move on quickly. We've got a little bit of time left.
Okay, nothing. Can we Okay, the last one, just for us to get your feedback on the value of today's webinar. My performance review is coming up. Your votes depend on this.
Taryn, do we have the roadmap presentation after
Yeah,
this one as well?
we do. We do. Straight after this. I'll give you just one more minute and then I'll switch to the roadmap. Guy, you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, what we did in the beginning of the year was we tried to get a roadmap for the year. These are big themes. They're not specific features, but they're themes that we're going to be working on. And within those themes are a bunch of things. So one of the themes that we've been working on already that you've seen here is the scheduling improvements. We will continue to work on the scheduling improvements, and we've got 4 or 5 other ones planned. Some of them are already in development, and that's what Taryn was referring to. So this is not everything we're going to do. There'll be other stuff pops up. I'm sure there's going to be stuff that we do it, but just a high level view of it. The external form, Taryn has demonstrated the feature. We've got one more item we want to address there for single sign-on clients. And then the external form in our mind in terms of what we were hoping to achieve in the roadmap is done. Like with anything we do in PPO, there will be enhancements then raised by the user community, and we'll continue to do that. PPO's approval mechanism is something we've had for a while, and we want to do some improvements on that. So looking at the improved workflow is something we'll be tackling later this year. Scheduling, I've mentioned a number of times. We'll continue working on that probably until middle of the year. Document management is something in PPO we're re-looking at and want to consider how to do it differently with all the different online mechanisms and document storages and those type of things these days. Homepage we'll continue to improve on. We're getting massive use and good feedback on the homepage and your ability to build your own customized views and share and copy and those things. Timesheets, we want to improve some timesheet stuff as well. So that'll come under the timesheet usability. We're looking at smarter ways to work within PPO using AI. So that'll be a feature, or that'll be a theme that we cover the entire year and probably into future years as well. Enabling editable status dashboards. So we see a future where you're able to pull up a project manager's status dashboard or a project manager's dashboard and edit that dashboard right there without having to log on to other pages and click into it and update the risk or whatever. So whether that's an executive dashboard or a status dashboard or something like that, we actively moving towards the ability to, from that dashboard, click, edit, save, publish, off you go. Business rule automation, we've got some nice ideas to do some improvements on the business rule automation, which will help update data and those type of things. And then one that Josh sort of alluded to now, better ways to link entity information together. So a lot of organizations want to do resource capacity planning, but in the demand phase. So not for a project yet, but for something that's not yet a project. So how do we link the resource capacity information to demand or to projects or to programs, and not just to projects? So that's the type of stuff that we're looking at. So these are the high level things. As I said, within these are numerous items. We've already completed 12 features in this. We have 7 in progress and 16 that have already been approved and are ready for development. And there will probably be at the end of the year close to 60, 70 maybe items in total. But this is what we're doing. There are smaller ones that pop in that are not part of our themed roadmap that we do because we think they're useful or they're quick and simple to do, and we'll continue to do that. But this is where we see ourselves spending our time in the next year. Okay, I know we're rushing out of time, and I know a lot of people need to drop off. I think there's one more. Okay, so what Taryn needs for what we'd like to hear from you guys is which of those roadmap themes do you think will give you the most value? And we'll see then within that if some of those items we can fast track or maybe give higher priority. But those are the items where we see us spending most of our time for the coming year. So you can vote on those in the meantime, and we'll then be able to see how we tackle these specific things. Okay, we'll leave the slide up because some of you, I think, will vote, and it'll take a bit of time, and we'll have a snapshot of that. Any questions that hasn't been answered? I think Lindy's answered most of them. I know some people have dropped off, and thanks for joining and thanks for dropping off, or for letting us know that you're dropping off.